most of the stories we've talked about involving your childhood are somewhat baleful. There are lots of rough things happening, whether it was, your dad being abusive to your mom or tipping the stove over, or your grandpa threatening you, or basically saying it's my way or an ass whooping.
Well, that was part of life.
Did you have any really good laughs when you were a kid, or?
Oh yeah, when we'd have rotten egg fights, or I'd plaster somebody with a corn cob or something of that nature. But
I mean, so was the Grand Ole Opry your highlight of childhood for sure?
I'll have to say it was.
Yeah,
I'll have to say that was probably the greatest event that ever took place in my life at that age.
Yeah.
But I was one of those type of people that I always kept pacified. I wanted to know what was over the next hill and what was behind that tree and what was under that rock. So, even though we had a full day at work, I had a full day at play for myself, just discovering stuff, just if it wasn't nothing but setting a snare out in the woods just to see if it worked, or thumping a beehive, see how many bees are in it, how fast I could outrun it, or, whatever, just, anything. Play skin a cat, and I don't know whether you know what that is or not, but you'd bend a tree limb that was pretty good size, maybe a sapling, 4 inches at the base, and you'd bend it over just as far as you could get it. And then you'd let the pressure off of it and ride it up to the next tree or something, kind of like a Tarzan act, you'd go jump on that limb or whatever. But yeah, I kept myself pacified.
When did you get into 4-H and farming and?
In high school, already was in the farming, so they had a 4-H club there, which means Future Farmers of America. So I said, well, if I'm going to be on the farm, I might as well discover what all this is about. So I joined the 4-H club there, and the guy was talking about first one thing and another, how to buy cattle and how to look for cattle and this type of stuff. Well, I wasn't interested in that. I already knew how to choose a cow or pick out the heifer that I wanted. And but that was just natural for me. But what interests me is they had a pig scramble every year at the fair. And we had hogs, but we didn't have my hog. So I asked him about the pig scramble, and he said, yeah, it's just shoats, which is a small hog. And he said, we turn them loose in the middle of the fairgrounds. And the contestants try to catch those pigs. And if you catch one and hold it and get it across the finish line, then that's your pig. And the payment is, when that pig grows up and has a litter, then you have to give one to another 4-H member. Oh, so you're interested in getting into the pig scramble? I said, yeah, I am. Yeah.
How old are you at this point?
Oh, I was probably
a freshman in high school kind of thing?
Yeah, maybe a sophomore, freshman or sophomore. I said, yeah, I'd like to get into that. So anyway, that year came around, and sure enough, I joined in. And there, not only would they grease the hogs, right, but they'd mush the arena. It was nothing but a loblolly.
Oh
so you're,
this sounds like a filthy experience.
It is. You got mud from ear to ear.
How do you grease a pig anyways?
Well, you pour grease on it, or, most of it is just kind of like axle grease, where they'd rub it all over them while they had them in the chute. And then not only was it a slick hog, but it was a wet hog, and that mud that you're trying to catch him in, even though you're barefooted, And when you got a hold of that hog, if you wasn't careful, you'd lose your drawers because that hog would be dragging you through that mud, and everything was building up on the inside. So it took you about a week to get cleaned up after you got into that deal. But there was probably 16 or 18 kids in there chasing them hogs, and they'd knock you out of the way trying to get to the same hog you was getting, especially if you'd already kind of got a hold of it. If they can get it away from you, that's your problem. And them hogs are squealing and kicking, and you get a foot in the face or a elbow in the ear or whatever.
How big are these?
They're probably
piglets?
about 40 pounds.
So these are like baby pigs?
Yeah, they're probably 8 weeks, 9 weeks old, something like that. But a 40-pound pig is solid, and he is strong.
So like bigger than a dog?
No, they're not that big. They're only about, I'm going to say they're probably about 14, 15 inches tall, and they're about 24 to 30 inches long. But they're all power.
Just pure muscle?
Just pure muscle, because all they do all day is run and then fall over and lay down like go sleep, right? And then they'll get up and take off again. So, watching them is a lot of fun. But catching them is even more fun, especially if they're greased. So anyway, I caught this pig, and she was mine. And so we had her for about a year and a half, and then I bred her to one of Granddad's old boars. And then she had some pigs. But she's my pet. She'd just follow you anywhere you wanted to go. It doesn't matter. She'd walk in the house with you if you'd let her. But I'd go hunting, and she'd be right there beside me, just oinking and squealing, like, shut up. I'm trying to hunt, and you're scaring everything off. But
this almost sounds like a cartoon, where Elmer Fudd's carrying the shotgun and Bugs Bunny is going step for step behind him.
Right. Well, that's the way she was. She was right there behind you. And I'd chase her back and put her in the pen, And she's an intelligent, hog's pretty intelligent. They can find a way out. They're going to find a way out. She'd just take her old nose and pick up the fence and walk in under it. In a few minutes, wherever I was, if I thought I was far enough away from her, she'd hunt me up. You could hear her coming through the bush, squealing. So anyway, I had a hunting pig.
What'd you name her?
Kay. Her name was Kay. And she'd have anywhere from 13, 14 pigs in a litter, which you had to be awful careful because she was a big hog at that time. She probably weighed around 400 pounds, 5.
Oh.
So.
Does their temperament change as they get older?
Only when they have small ones with them. Then they can get pretty vicious. But
did she ever?
She never was aggressive to me, but if it was a stranger around, she'd be pretty aggressive to them. She'd put you up a tree, but she never was aggressive toward me. If she had, I guess I'd ate her, but she was never that way.
So did you end up moving off the farm before whatever happened with the pig
happened?
Well,
she got to the place to where that she was older, so she was probably 4 or 5 years old, and she had a litter of pigs, and then she ate 3 or 4 of them.
She ate her own pigs?
Yeah. So I decided right then, she needs to go. So I think she went to the sausage factory.
Was that common?
Well, in some hogs it is, yeah. They'll eat their own.
Just because they don't want to deal with raising them, or?
Who knows? It's not because she was malnutrition.
Right. Yeah. It's more of an executive decision that the pig is making.
It may be something with the pig itself that she didn't like, and because she didn't eat them all, so that would make you think that there was something going on that in her mind that the best way to do it is just devour it.
Well, that's pretty
Well,
savage.
you know,
But
hog is kind of like a buzzard. It's a vulture, as such.
with hooves.
Yeah, yeah. Scavenger. You know, they'll eat anything, including snakes, as you was mentioning a while ago. Yeah. If you're going to clean up the place, just put you some hogs in there. You won't find a snake.
Were there rattlers out in?
Oh yeah, we had big timber rattlers. Yeah. And
So
copperheads.
So the pig, you'd send the pig out in front, or
Well, what you do is, if you had a piece of property, and say for instance, we had what we called a hog lot. So that those hogs stayed within that lot area. But if we was working new ground in the springtime, summertime, and nobody had been in there stirring around for a while, it was pretty active on snakes. There was snakes in there. So when this first came up, us boys were up in the woods, and copperheads were everywhere. We'd cut a tree down, we'd be cleaning it up, and next thing you know, here's a copperhead laying there. So we got back to the house and told Granddad that. He said, well, I guess we'll just put the hogs in there tomorrow. What do they have to do with it? He said, they'll clean them snakes out, boy. I said, they will? He said, they'll eat them all. Just let them run in there for about 2 or 3 weeks. You won't find a snake. So we drove the hogs up into those woods, and they was up there probably about, I'm going to say at least 3 weeks before we got back in there, and never saw a snake, not one. But I did see a hog eat one, and the snake struck the hog, and when the snake struck the hog just turned around and just nailed it and just slurped it right up.
like spaghetti?
Yeah, this is it, buddy. But then asking questions like that when you see something like that, because you think a copperhead bites a human being, right? We're in trouble.
Yeah, you got maybe what, an hour or two?
Yeah, maybe. So, you know, and I saw the snake strike the hog, and the hog just turned around and ate the snake. So I'm asking my granddad, I said, is that hog going to get, no, that hog's fine. If snake bites a hog, don't worry about it. Because the veins in the hog is so deep that the fangs are not going to hit it. So it's just going to put the venom inside the skin, and that's it. And the hog's going to eat the snake, so don't worry about it. Okay. Well, I learned that that's true.
So that's, you know, a creative way of
Cleaning up the piece of
rodent
property.
management, but there was also other sort of intricacies of when to use different farm animals to serve different purposes.
Yeah.
What were you telling me about? Was it donkeys?
Mm-hmm. Yep. Donkeys, burros. Yep. Put them with the herd. There's no outside animals going to bother them, like coyotes or fox or whatever. They're not going to. Those donkeys just stomp them to death or kick them to death or run them off. So they're not going to get to the herd.
So will they instinctively protect?
Yeah, that's their nature. That's their purpose. You know, you'll see a lot of ranches in Texas that has nothing but donkeys.
Yeah.
And well, now they use it as an ag deal, where
Right, to get the ag exemption.
Yes.
But no, I know what you mean. Yeah,
but
they're pretty prominent.
But if you've got calves and horses out in the field, just put you some donkeys in there. You don't have to worry about the coyotes chasing them down. You know, they're not going to bother them. They're donkeys. It's just somehow or other run them off. Doesn't matter how I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it. So, you know, they're pretty protective.
So did you have any other pet animals when you were a kid besides the pig?
I had some squirrels,
You had
squirrels.
Pet squirrels?
Yeah, and a crow. I had a crow that we'd robbed the nest, and was the only bird in there. So I took it home and we kept it around there for a while. And Granddad asked me, he said, one day, he said, "What are you going to do with that damned old crow?" And I said, "Well, I'm going to teach it to talk." He said, "What?" See, I was one of those guys that wanted, if a parrot could talk, why couldn't a crow talk? So I said, "Yeah, I think I'll split its tongue and, let it talk." And he said, "Boy, that crow's not going to That crow is not going to talk." I said, "How do you know?" He said, "He just won't. Crows don't talk. They call." But I had in my mind that I was going to keep jacking with it till it would talk, but never did talk, So finally I let it go. But the squirrels, I like my squirrels. They, you ever heard the song about the squirrel running up the lady's dress in church and that kind of stuff, or Ray Stevens?
Can't say I have.
Yeah, it's a pretty neat song. But that's what I do with my squirrels. I take them to school and turn them loose in the schoolroom. Next thing you know, you can see all these heads come up, rise down, because the squirrel was going in and out of their feet. And had me a pet skunk at one point in my life. And we went into me and my brother, we went to the movies that night, and I had my skunk with me. And he said, "What are you going to do with that skunk?" I said, "I'm going to turn it loose in the theater." He said, "No, you're not." And I said, "Yes, I am. I'm just going to see what happens." Of course, it was already fixed, so it wasn't going to spray nobody. So anyway, I turned it loose. Sure enough, you could hear all these people screaming and running for the door. So we just sat in the seats and watched the whole theater clear out, That was our way of having fun.
You were a miscreant.
I was a what?
Troublemaker.
Yeah, basically I was. Subtly, I
That's
didn't.
pretty harmless.
Yeah.
I mean, turning a skunk loose is a lot less
Well, that was
damaging than taking baseball bats
Yeah.
to mailboxes and
Yeah.
firebombing
Yeah.
things. And
that was a whole lot of fun.
Arson.
I took the skunk to school one time, and we had outhouses. We didn't have indoor plumbing.
for the school,
Yeah, for the school, and it was 2-room school. And anyway, I took it to school, and I'd hit it outside, and carried it in a tow sack. If you don't know what a tow sack is, it's a burlap sack that used to buy potatoes and stuff in. So anyway, I put it in the sack, took it to school, and went up to the teacher and asked her if I could be excused, because every day around 11:30, 12 o'clock, she'd go to the outhouse. So I asked her if I could be excused, and it was probably around 11:15 or something like that. So I put the skunk in the outhouse, and sure enough, she headed out for the little building. You could hear her scream, "Ah!" when she opened the door, and she was a nervous wreck. She come running back into the classroom and said, "Somebody's got to go get that skunk." I said, "I'll do it, Miss Mary. I'll go get it." So, I went out and got it. Of course, I was praised all afternoon about taking care of that skunk in the outhouse and that kind of stuff. So she said, "What are you going to do with it?" I said, "I'm going to take it home." She said, "You're going to take it home?" I said, "Yes, ma'am." She said, "What if it gets sprayed?" I said, tomato juice and vinegar will take that off, so maybe I won't, but yeah, I'm going to take it home. And she asked me the next day, she said, "Did you get that skunk home without getting sprayed?" And I said, "You don't smell nothing, do you?" She said, "No, I don't. But how'd you get it home?" I said, "I carried it." She said, "In that sack?" I said, "Yes, ma'am." She said, "Well, I don't know what kept you from getting sprayed, but all right, I'm glad you didn't. But I sure thank you for getting it out of the outhouse." "You're welcome." Those kind of things, that's what I'm saying, being pacified, with my own well-being.
That's interesting stuff from a kid who grew up in the city. You never hear stuff like that. Or what about when you learn how to run a plow, right?
If you're city folks come to our house, we can have a ball with you.
Oh yeah, you'd have all sorts of laughs.
Yeah,
At my expense.
We'd make you go snipe hunting, take you snipe hunting.
There's no such thing as snipe. That's the joke, right?
Well, basically it is. But if you don't know there's not, then you're sitting out there all night whistling for them, right? Of course, we're at home in the bed asleep while you're holding the bag.
Snipe. Hunting snipe. Yeah. What about farming? What kind of crop did you all have?
We raised tobacco, cotton. Tobacco was the main crop. So we raised tobacco and cotton, corn, alfalfa hay, and cerisa hay. And cerisa is kind of hay that it's a stemmy hay, but it had a lot of product for the cattle in it. So it was basically cow hay, where alfalfa is a lot of horse hay and good protein. Cerisa kind of grew wild in that part of the world, so we'd raise it. And you'd just take in the fall when after the frost hit, it would seed. And you'd just take a sack and you'd put all the seed in the sack, which is, it's natural for that part of the country. So all you have to do is just scatter it across the field and it's going to come right back up. But primarily tobacco was our main crop.
So your grandfather or grandpa, whatever you call it, granddaddy, he had dairy cows, hogs,
right?
For meat.
Beef, yeah.
And then all those various crops.
Yep.
And then did your grandma tend to garden? Did you guys have?
We had a garden, yeah. Us boys took care of it. Grandma'd do the canning, but it was just for the family. We didn't sell anything out of the garden.
I mean, there was more than enough to.
Oh yeah. There'd be tons of stuff that, like spring of the year would be turnips and turnip greens. And then once that season was over with, then we'd go to planting, like tomatoes and rhubarb and corn.
How'd you keep the deer from eating all that stuff?
Deer never got to our ranch, our place. They were killed long before they got there because we were in the valley in the Cumberland Mountains. So most of the city folks, they would be hunting between us and what I call the outside world. So there wasn't no deer, and they just butcher them before they ever hit the woods. Almost.
So you never had anything attack or eat your crops?
Well, we'd have like coons. They'd come in and like strawberry patches and that kind of stuff. They'd come in and eat their fill of that. You might want to find one in the road the next morning laying there so full he couldn't move, but they would do that. And possums, we'd have a lot of possum problems and coons, but primarily the big animals, the bear and that kind of stuff, they wouldn't.
Did you ever see a bear?
Oh yeah, used to hunt them all the time.
Black bear?
Black bear. Yeah. And there wasn't that many in that part of the country at the time, but they were a few. And we had bear traps that we'd set around the farm so that they wouldn't, they'd go to them first because we'd bait them, and then they'd go mess around there and might get caught in the trap or throw the trap or whatever. But bear's smart. You get him caught one time, he's not coming back, as a rule. They're not aggressive because they're in the wild. Now, bears up in the Smoky Mountains, they would get aggressive because they're used to people. So, people going through there and feeding them and that kind of thing. So they thought every cart came by, they needed something to eat. So, they'd be standing on the side of the road up there.
I've seen one from about 3 feet away,
Yeah, yeah.
but it was separated by a window
Oh, really?
because we went up to the Smokies and
Yeah.
rented one of those cabins.
Right.
And my dad fired up the barbecue that was there.
Well, that'll bring them
it
out.
started a grease fire, so all this grease came dripping out onto the the
Right.
wraparound patio.
Right.
Well, there was a bear there the next morning. There was a smaller one, like a cub probably.
Right.
What was out there licking the
grease?
grease off the pavement.
Yeah.
And then it walked around the walk-around patio. But I mean, it was, we followed it all around the outside of the house, and you could actually, we made eye contact with it. It looked up at us,
Yeah.
but it felt no threat. But it was crazy to be that close to a bear.
Yeah. It's an experience.
Because their paws
Oh, yeah. Huge.
can do so much damage to you.
Yep.
And they look all innocent and harmless, and
Yeah.
they wouldn't mess with us, but
They'll rip you from eyeball to earlobe.
yeah. Well, I just find your childhood memories to be particularly fascinating because I don't know that that's even really even kids who live out in the country these days, in Texas, the most experience they get is wrangling and roping,
Right.
and riding horses.
Right.
They never plant anything.
No.
Or maybe they'll go hunting and shoot deer,
Oh, yeah, they'll do that.
but it's a totally different
Environment.
experience because what you did was subsistence, as well as that was the avocation of what your granddaddy did.
Well, we made our own fun, and we had our own fun. We worked hard, and we supplied a lot of stuff for the family. But as far as thinking that we were neglected in any way, if you've never been exposed to nothing, then you don't know what you're missing.
Well,
So,
you've been a hard worker since you were what, 8 years old?
yeah, I started milking when I was about 8 and taking care of the farm animals and cattle. But, people say like you just said, that I'm a hard worker. I don't know anything else to do other than work, because from the time that, as far back as I can remember, we had chores to do. So it was kind of built into your mind, you don't have time to sit down. And if you do, then you must be sick. So otherwise you need to be out cleaning out a fence row or chopping cotton or planting tobacco or whatever. So, and that's where I got in trouble with my guitar, because
Took away from your chores.
took away from my chores, even though it didn't.
Right.
Because I tried to do it between times, or like the day I got called, it was raining, so what else was you going to do? So, but anyway, I had a hard time sitting down even today and playing the guitar or working on my music in any way. I felt this guilt complex, like you need to be doing something else. So it was dwelled in your mind, you don't have time for fun. Life is a work, and if you don't work, then you don't receive. So, but even though, you do work when you're writing, you do work when you're playing, you're working at what you're doing. And learning how to play the guitar or learning how to write is a full-time job. But if you've never been exposed to that, like my granddad wasn't, he thought when you said, I'm going to play, he literally took it to play. Well, I got some things you can do, boy, other than play, right? So you need to be working, not playing. So that was drilled in my head from a little fella all the way up till I left home. And then it made such an impression when I finally did get a guitar and sit down and go to playing it. this ghost in my mind would say, "You need to go to work. What are you doing sitting here?" You know. So it was constantly nagging at me. So I felt guilty when I was trying to learn the guitar. I need to be doing something else.
Well, you were doing the horseshoeing and farriering, if that's the proper verb, farriering.
Farrier. Mm-hmm.
For the who's who of the Nashville circuit.
Yeah.
When we last left off, so you were still living in Tennessee.
Sure.
And so you had begun networking with some well-known country singers, and then Red Stegall moved in to your neck of the woods.
Right.
And you started shoeing his horses. And then at what point did he bring you in on his enterprise, his music enterprise?
Well, it's probably 74, 75, somewhere in there, in that era. He called me one morning to the shop, and they were in Pine Mountain, Georgia. And he asked me about coming down and getting a bus. He had just purchased a bus down there. And they was in one of those motor homes, is what they was traveling at that time. But put 6 guys in a motorhome with all their band equipment, you know, and you've got no room. So he had purchased this coach and wanted me to come down and pick it up and take it back to Nashville. So the story went over the phone anyway. But when I got there, this coach was huge. And I'd driven the school bus before, but school bus is not in comparison to one of these trailways or continentals that bus terminals have. So when I got there, I looked at it and I thought, holy mackerel, this sucker's as long as the world. I don't know how in the world, you know, it's not going to be in the middle, so unless I do it. But, you know, I don't know anything about having to drive it. I didn't even know how to start it. So I told him, I said, that's a big coach. He said, yeah, it is. And that's the reason you're here. You're going to take us back to Nashville. I said, okay. So next morning I got up, while they was all asleep, and I went down, and he'd given me the keys the night before, so I went down, turned the ignition on, you know, and all these lights came on. To me, it looked like the cockpit of an airplane. Holy mackerel, what's all this for? You know, what's this do? What's that do? So I decided, you know, I better leave it alone until I find out what they all do. So I went into the hotel lobby there and I asked the receptionist. I said, is there a bus terminal around here somewhere? And she said, happens to be one right down the street, matter of fact. So Red and them get up and they're out messing around in the lobby and that kind of stuff. They want to go sightseeing that morning. So they got this band coming to pick them up, and they're going to go do whatever they're going to do. And he asked me, he said, you want to go? And I said, no, I think I'm going to stay out, hang out here. And what I had in mind was to go down to the bus terminal, find out all about this coach, if somebody down there could tell me. So while they done their thing, I went down and done my thing with the bus terminal. And the guy down there was nice enough to take me out on the lot and drive the coach around, show me exactly how to maneuver it, and what I needed to do. In fact, he put a glass of water on the dash. And he said, just watch that water, and you don't want to slosh any out. You don't want to make any quick moves with the coach. You want to make it a continuous movement, because 40 foot back there, you're yanking somebody's head off if you make a quick move. So I could relate to that. So anyway, he spent his lunch hour showing me how to maneuver this coach and how to start it, and you know. But the things he didn't tell me is what I had to learn much later down the road, like keeping it up as far as maintenance and that kind of stuff, which I knew nothing about that. And but
you didn't know it was going to evolve into that, right?
No.
You thought this was a one-way.
I didn't know that until about 8 hours later. We was on our way out. It was fiddle player's birthday and we left out at dark. And I told Red when we got on there, he said, well, we're all going to party because it's Snuffy's birthday. And so
Snuffies?
the fiddle player. Everybody on the coach had a nickname.
His was Snuffy.
His name was Snuffy because he always dipped snuff.
Oh, Snuff. Okay.
So we had Grandpa Hicks, which is the oldest. He's the bass player. And he was the oldest guy on there. Then we had Woody Woods. And Woody's nickname was, his real name was James, but his nickname was Woody. And he's still a guitar player. And we called Danny McGonigal, which was the drummer, we called him Waffle because he talked pig Latin and it sounded like every other word just in waffle doffle. So we called him Waffle. And then Red's little brother, we called him Dip. And you can imagine why, but anyway. And then instead of Red, we called Red Russell, our boss.
I figured Red was a nickname.
Well, it is. Yeah. His real name is Russell Don, but we called him Red.
So y'all are on the way back.
We were on our way out of Atlanta, and one of the boys come up there and asked me, said, you got this? I said, I'll hold her between the two ditches. So unless you feel a hard bump, we're okay.
It's not very reassuring.
So, well, I wasn't too assured that I could get them there.
Yeah.
But anyway, I learned enough that day to maneuver the bus. But they went back and was having drinks and partying back there, celebrating Snuffy's birthday. And I came into Jackson, Mississippi. I'd been driving a pretty good little while. Came into Jackson, Mississippi, and there's highway, I think it's 45, that comes out of Jackson, Mississippi, and goes up through Tupelo that way, and it comes back out on Interstate 40 just outside of Jackson, Tennessee. And I was going to go that way and then go back into Nashville, which in Nashville, once you hit 40, Nashville is back east. So you'd turn to the right and you'd go right back to Nashville, which was the shortest route home. So anyway, I turned my signal on, and I heard somebody say, no, not here, no. And I didn't know they was talking to me, but anyway, Red came to the front, and he said, no, we're not going to Nashville. I said, we're not? I thought that's what you wanted me to do. He said, no. Well, that's what I told you, but he said, we're going to Minot, North Dakota.
It's a little bit further.
I said, Minot, North Dakota? Where in the hell is Minot, North Dakota?
I've been to Minot.
He said, it's kind of up next to the Canadian border.
Yeah, kind of.
And he said, just continue straight ahead.
It's a slight detour. Add a good 20 hours of driving.
Yeah, well, longer than that, but nevertheless, I was all wound up. So my adrenaline was right up the roof. So as far as getting sleepy or whatever I was doing, this is the biggest event that ever happened in my life. So if you want to go to Germany, hey man, I'm all for it. Doesn't matter. So anyway, we got into Memphis, and it was breaking daylight. We got to Memphis. So James got up, which is a steel guitar player we call Woody. He gets up and he comes to the front and he says, when's the last time you put diesel in this thing? I said, it takes diesel? He said, yeah, it takes diesel. And I said, okay. I hadn't put any in it. He said, well, I guess we'd better pull over and fill up the tanks because I don't know how much was in here when we started. And I said, well, neither do I. So, where's the gas hand on this thing? So he kind of pointed it out. He said, it's right there. And sure enough, it was in the red. So we pulled it in there and we filled it up. Well, Red comes out and he says, "You probably need to call your wife and let her know where you are, because you'll be gone about 5 or 6 days." "I will?" "Yeah." So anyway, I called my wife and I said, "Well, I'm taking to Minot, North Dakota." She said, "Where's that?" I said, "It's up next to the Canadian border. This time and one more make me twice, so I don't know." So anyway, she said, "Okay, just be careful." She took it cool. And so we was on our way to Minot. And we got into...
What was there? Was he playing there?
Yeah,
or?
we were playing in an Indian reservation there.
Okay.
So I didn't know at the time how that got booked or why it got booked or anything about the business, you know. So I was just driving. And but anyway, we get into North Dakota, somewhere up in there, and all the boys on the bus are hungry. Or maybe it's Mexico, New Mexico. We get in New Mexico, that's where it was. Well, Albuquerque.
Well, that's nowhere near Minot.
No, it's still a long way to Minot. But anyway, they're hungry. So I whipped the bus over. And Red had introduced everybody to me when we was in Atlanta. This is Danny, this is Woody, this is Waffle, this, so on and so forth. And so I thought I had everybody's names down, right? So I couldn't place the names of the persons yet because I didn't see that much of the guys. When I started driving, they all filed on the bus and got in their beds and that kind of stuff, and there's curtains between me and the back. So I couldn't relate to who was who yet. And I was new at the deal. So they all went in to breakfast, and of course I go in too. And Red looks at me and he said, did you wake up the other guy?" "What other guy?" So I'm trying to count heads. He said, "No, Roadhog. Did you wake him up?" I said, "I don't know." He said, "Well, you need to go check." So I said, "Okay." So I go out the bus and I look all over the bus and hollering, "Roadhog! Hey, Roadhog! Roadhog!" You know. No answer. So I go back in and Red said, "Well, is he on there?" I said, "He must be in here somewhere in the bathroom." He said, "You need to go check." So I went and checked in the bathroom, hollered his name out, you know, Roadhog. So when I got back, they was all laughing. "What are y'all laughing about?" I said, "I don't know, it's just kind of funny. You're running around here hollering Roadhog, and, you know, it's just kind of hilarious to us. But he's around here somewhere. You just need to find him." Well, I'm a nervous wreck, because I thought maybe I'd run off and left him somewhere, right? And I'm afraid that...
It sounds like a snipe hunt.
Oh, yeah, it kind of was, yeah. So anyway, come to find out, Roadhog didn't exist. Roadhog was a teddy bear that was a mascot for the coach that sat up on top of the little pedestal above my driver's cabin. So they all got a big kick out of that. And I looked for Roadhog my whole entire breakfast time, right? So they got a big kick out of that. But we got them into Minot. We got into Minot. Well, only thing I had on was a light shirt, which it was June and home, so I had on a short sleeve shirt. Minot, North Dakota was cold to me. I mean, it was bitter. And I told Red, I said, "I don't have a jacket. I didn't bring any clothes, you know. I thought I was just going to come down.
Because you were just flying down and driving back.
Right. I'm just coming down here to pick y'all up and go back. So I didn't bring any clothes. And I said, "I'm freezing." He said, "Well, we'll go down and get you some clothes." So we went down to the outfitters and got me a jacket and some jeans and necessities that I needed. And so I thought, okay, I'm going to get through Minot. We're headed back home. So we played Minot and got finished there. One of the announcers for the rodeo, he wanted to ride to Vegas. And so he asked Red, he said, can I hitch a ride to Vegas? And Red said, yeah, sure, get on here. So we left Minot, headed for Vegas. And I finally asked Red, I said, are we in Vegas? Are we playing Vegas? He said, well, we are. You're not. I said, I didn't mean I was playing. I just asked if we was going to Vegas and you had a gig there. He said, yeah, we're there for about 5 days. So we're not going home. No, we're going to play Vegas, and then we're going to Kerrville, Texas. And we're going to be in Kerrville for 3 or 4 days. And then we're going to Fort Worth, and we're going to be in Fort Worth at the stock show and a rodeo event going on there. And then maybe we'll be back home, depending on whether the booking agent books us something else or not. Oh, that's the way this works. He said, yeah, it's kind of when you're on the road, you know. So that's the way it was. But anyway, on the way out of there, they intended to have some more fun with me because I knew nothing about the industry whatsoever.
Had they sort of told you that you had been designated the bus driver?
No, not this particular.
Because you still have your
I
farrier
still have
business.
a farrier business
back
going
in Tennessee,
on.
right?
Right. But I had an apprentice that was going to handle things for a little while, you know.
But this trip sounds like it's adding up to days on
Oh,
end
it
now.
is. It's banking on up there. So anyway, we come out of Minot, and I'm driving, and it's night, and somebody had set the CB on Channel 9, and they've got a walkie-talkie in the back of the bus that'll come over the CB just like if you was on Channel 16 or 17, whatever. But this walkie-talkie is set up for Channel 9. So somebody slipped up and turned the channel on 9. So I hear this voice coming over the CB. He says, breaker 19 for that Stegall bus. Well, I reach up and get a hold of the speaker, and I said, you got Stegall bus? He said, well, this is Rufus Thibodeau. And I understand y'all's got a fiddler on there that's probably the state champion. And I'm going to beg to differ with you. I'm the state champion. Well, I never heard of Rufus Thibodeau in my life. And he is a notorious fiddle player, but he's a Cajun fiddler, right? And I had to find this out later on because I knew nothing about fiddling, or I knew nothing about bands or anything of this nature. So anyway, it kept getting more aggressive and telling me how good he was and so on and so forth. Well, I'd heard Snuffy play before, right? So I begged to differ with him. I said, well, I'm going to bet you $100 our fiddle player is going to outplay you 100 to 1. So this kind of set up the situation. So this went on for hours, bickering back and forth. And it got pretty belligerent at times. And I could hear the boys back there laughing. And they'd always input, well, tell that son of a buck that, we're going to put another 20 on it. So finally, this was going on for about 7 or 8 hours. So finally, I asked him, I said, all right, where do you want to have this showdown? And who's going to judge it? And he said, well, I don't care. Let Red judge it. Okay, great. He's on my coach. I've got the fiddle player on my coach. Yeah, this could be a one-way trip. I'm thinking trade-wise from the way I was raised. If everything's in your corner, you go ahead and bet. So anyway, everything was in my corner working up to that point. So we'd picked out a parking lot in Pierre, South Dakota, where we was going to pull in and have this breakdown right on the parking lot. But I kept looking in my rear view, and he was supposed to be behind me. I never saw a headlight. I never saw nothing because it wasn't nothing but highway and darkness. And I'd check my rear view occasionally, and he said, well, we're right behind you, man. We're right behind. They was in Red's room back there talking to me on the CB, right? But I didn't know all that was going on. So anyway, we get into this parking lot there in Pierre, and I pull the coach in. They all go into the restaurant. I'm in there, gritting my teeth and wringing my hands and watching the parking lot. I'm waiting for this bus to pull in behind us. Well, it went on and on and on and on. And finally, Daryl Hicks, the bass player, he gets up. He said, Don, you need to go out there and check and see if they're here yet. They might not be driving the bus. They might be driving a truck or something. So I said, yeah, I'll go out and check. So I go out and check. So I go to the coach because Red hadn't come in yet. So I go to the coach, and Red's back in his bunk asleep. So I go back there and I said, hey, you need to be getting up. These guys are going to come up here for this contest, and you got to judge it. He said, yeah, just get me up whenever they show up. I said, okay, but you need to be getting ready because I got $100 on this, right? And he said, well, I think other boys got some money on it too. Well, they played it to the hilt. So Daryl comes back out while I'm checking the parking lot. Daryl comes back out and he said, hey, come on in and get something to eat. If they're not out there, you need to go ahead and eat. So I order breakfast and I'm sitting there eating. The fiddle player comes running over there to where I'm at. They all go out and are on the bus is what I'm thinking. So anyway, I'm just sitting there eating, having my coffee, and kind of looking around to see if anybody strange is in there. It looks like another band. So Snuffy comes running in and he says, Don, they're out there. They're out there. They're out there, man. Let's go. So I, pay my ticket and I go out on the parking lot. So I go out to the parking lot. This guy is sitting on this pedestal that like a light post pedestal. He's sitting there and he's got his back to me and a pair of coveralls on. And I said, is that them? Snuffy said, yeah, that's him right there. I know him anywhere. So anyway, all the boys in getting off the bus and they're coming up to this guy sitting on this pedestal, right? And I'm headed that way. And I hollered and I said, Rufus! He never looked up. So we go over there and walk around in front of this guy, and it's Red. He's dressed up with a pair of old bib overalls on. He's got this fiddle that he's sitting there on this deal doing. And they crack up, man. I mean, they have had more fun out of that ordeal than you can imagine. And I said, guys, I know I've been had. I don't know how, but I know I've been had. So I hope you all's had your fun because paybacks are hell. So, but I never got the opportunity to pay them back. But yeah, they kept me going for about 9 hours on a fictitious deal that they had set up in the back. So yeah, I was their patsy, you might say, their fun, because they'd been on the road for several years. So they was using me as a real, I guess you'd say, a toy for them.
Is that why they picked you?
Well, I think that and my attitude, that Red kind of knew me for some years.
Yeah, because, you've been working on his horses, so
Yeah.
at what point did you have to make a decision? Or
When we got to Vegas, I told Red, I said, all right, we need to talk because I've got my own business back home. And, you told me you wanted to come down to Atlanta and take you back to Nashville. I didn't have any earthly idea this was...
Yeah, what it evolved into.
Yeah, what it evolved into. So I need, and this is my special time of the year. You know, Derby's coming up, and I go to Kentucky every year and work the horses at Derby. So I need to know what the plans are. Uh, he said, well, I don't know exactly what you're asking. I said, what I'm asking is this a permanent situation, or you just need me to fill in until you can find somebody? And he said, no, I'd like for it to be permanent. And I said, okay, let's talk salary, because what I make a year makes a big difference in my livelihood. So, is it going to be compatible with what I make? And he said, well, what do you make? And I'm very suspicious at this point, right? Like, it's none of your business what I make. So he said, no, I'm going to make it compatible with what you make in shooting. But you need to be here. And you've got to be here because we're counting on you to get us from one point to the other. And I'm sure there's other people out there that I could find, but I know you and I trust you. And I want you to be part of this group. So why don't you talk it over to the wife? You got 3 or 4 days here. And if you need to, fly home, do whatever you need to do, because we're set right here for 3 or 4 days. Okay. So I talked to the wife and asked her, how James was doing, which was the apprentice. And she said, well, he's doing fine. Everything's okay. So just enjoy yourself and see you when you get in. So we played Vegas.
Is that when you met Elvis?
No. This was later on when we went back to Vegas.
I gotcha.
So anyway, he said, this is something that's going to be permanent. And it's going to take you into a different direction than what you're accustomed to. And you like music, you get along good with people, and I want you to be part of this group.
What were your thoughts about it? Because that's a big switch.
Oh, yeah, it's a big switch. My first thought was, I don't have to work that hot forge anymore, and I'm not sweating peas over a hot fire or hollering whoa all day, and it's a much easier life as far as physical. But so yeah, I think I might like this if he's going to be compatible with what I make. So and it wasn't like it was you went in and clocked into the factory,
right?
You were the only free person once you got to where you was going. Only job I had at that particular moment was drive the coach. So I didn't have any other worries other than making sure the fuel was in there and the oil was up and we was ready to roll. So it was easy to me. I never had a job that easy before. So I liked it, and I liked the music, and I liked the guys in the band. They were okay, even though they was using me for a patsy a lot of times for a joke. But it was an interesting and entirely different environment than what I was accustomed to.
It just came up out of nowhere.
Yeah, and just spring on you like that, And all you've known is hard work. This is gravy train.
So did you you said you had an apprentice kind of holding things down for you back in Nashville. Did you tell him the same thing Canfield said to you, like, hey, this is yours now?
No, not yet, because I wasn't quite sure whether this was. I was always leery. I wanted to make sure before I opened my mouth,
Well, that's wise, because that's such a huge change.
Yes, it's such a change. And, knowing what I know now, which I didn't know then, I'd probably gave it a whole lot more thought than what I did. But not knowing anything about the music industry and how it worked and where it could take you or not take you, And at that particular point, if you have somebody that you're looking up to and he's in it, and he's got the potential outlook of where you're going. So
Red's career was on the upswing.
oh yeah,
He
at
was
that
just
period,
starting
it was just beginning to move because he just got a new contract with Capitol, I think at that time. So, but not knowing how the music industry worked, to me it was like a security position, right? Which in the music industry there's no security, none. Uh, if you had hit songs going, you had a job. If you didn't have hit songs going, then you had no work because everything was based off airplay and sales. And that's the part I didn't know. I was ignorant to. I had no earthly idea how that worked. But I also had this mindset that if they're an entertainer, then they must have money to the point where you don't have to worry about it, right? If they've hired you and hired all these other guys, then the security part is fine. The financial part should be secure. So it wasn't told to me any different. It wasn't told to me like, okay, if I don't work, you don't work. If I don't have a hit song, then I might have a record deal next year and I might not, which means you're going to be out of a job. But
So how was he making all these assurances that he could be competitive with what you were making? And
well, it was like,
was he just being kind of deceiving? So he wanted you
I
to
can't
feel
say
that?
he was deceiving because at that particular point he was probably making great wages, great money. And he probably was like myself. He probably had enough confidence in what he was going to do and how things were laid out to him from other people's info to him that he could relate that to me as job security. Where he felt like that the people that had told him, you've got a contract, you're here for 2 or 3 albums, and let's see where it goes. 2 or 3 albums could have been 3 years, it could have been 2 years, it could have been 5 years, who knows. But as long as you have hit songs moving out there, then you've got a job. And if you don't have a job, then you have nothing on the air that's playing. So he had things on the air playing.
See, I'd never even heard of him.
Yeah. Well, a lot of people hadn't heard of him, you know. I hadn't ever heard him on the radio before I ever went to work for him. I heard him on records at his house or tapes at his house.
So was he kind of a B-list country act?
Well,
I mean, who would you equate him to in terms of level of
I
prominence?
can't say he was on the B list because him and Don Lanier had written a song called Here We Go Again. And Ray Charles had cut that song. So when you listen to Ray Charles sing that song, Ray Charles wasn't the country act.
Didn't he become a big country star?
Well, he did, but at the time he recorded that record, he
hadn't started yet?
He had started country career. But he had done that, and so from my end of things, this was the author and the writer of a song that Ray Charles had cut. If Ray Charles had cut this song, and it went as far as it went with Ray Charles, I think it was number 1. So if it went as a number 1, why was I worried about it? You know? I wasn't worried about going to work for Canfield for nothing.
That's true.
So, you know, hey, I'm in this for the long haul. I'm not scared. Okay. I was scared of what my customers, as shoeing customers, would think of me. And if I had to fall back on that, I know how the horse industry worked.
That
You know?
that's in my mind when you tell me this story.
Yeah.
That's what's in the pit of my stomach. Is
Yeah.
well, what about all your clients?
Right.
What about this book of business you've built and all these
Right. So,
relationships?
that part bothered me to a little point. But man, I was where I needed to be and wanted to be all my life. So,
You just didn't know how you were going to get there.
right.
Or,
And here I am. I'm not even supposed to be here, but here I am. And are you going to throw that away? Because this is what you strive for, to get out of Tennessee, to get out of the labor end of the industry, and get into the music end of it.
but did Red know that?
Yeah, Red knew how I felt about that.
He did. Okay, so
Yeah.
that's why he asked you to fly down and drive that
Probably,
bus.
and he had already made me a promise that if he had anything to come up, I was going to be the guy in line. So everything in my mind was like it should be, right? Ever since I'd bought my first guitar from old Charlie, right?
Right.
And watched it burn. My desire was to be involved in music somewhere. Didn't matter. If the devil played on the stump and he wanted me to sit there and pat my foot, if he played music, you bet you, I'll sit right there and pat my foot. And that's where I was. And I was young. I was 26, right? And I'd already lived a pretty good life at the things I'd been involved in and what I'd done. But I wasn't to where that I wanted to be at that particular point. I wanted to be in the music. I was a good horseshoer, and I was taught by a great guy, and I had a great clientele, and that part of my end of it was successful. So I thought, okay, if you blow it all, only thing you have to do is go back and pick up your hammer and nails and go back at it. What do you got to lose? You're right here. You got the shot, so go for it. So after I talked to my wife, and she wasn't worried, or seemed to worry. Of course, she wasn't worried when I went to Canfield for nothing. Work for him for nothing. But it was a drive and desire that I'd had. So, yeah, okay, I'm gonna trust him, sure. So let's go for it. So, but in Vegas, we were out there, and I learned a lot about Red, and a little about the industry and what you should do. Red's wife had got kicked by one of the horses when we were in Vegas. So Red was on stage, and
Did his show include horses?
No, not at that time. No. Only time Red used the horses in the rodeo arena, but we was playing John Nugget Saloon. So, the Golden Nugget Saloon. That's where we was playing. So, anyway, this stage manager came up to me and he said, Red's got a phone call from Nashville. And Red's on...
Oh, I see. His wife back home
Yes, his wife
had
back
been
home.
kicked. Okay.
Yeah, she'd been kicked. By
So
the
all the
horse.
wives are back home. All
Right.
you guys are on the bus.
Yes.
I see.
Yes. So anyway, I go to the phone and it's Vanderbilt Hospital, and they want to talk to Red because Bobby had been kicked. Red's first wife had been kicked by the horse, and had ruptured her intestinal tract.
Oh my gosh.
And she had laid in this barn for a couple of days, or a day and a half, before anybody found her. So the infection had already got started, so they didn't think they was going to be able to save her. So Bobby was a friend of mine, a close friend as Red was, because when I was over at their house, and her and my wife were close. So I'm thinking, okay, if it's my wife, I don't care where I'm at. I want somebody to tell me right now. So I walk out on stage and tell Red, when he takes a break and the band fills in a break, I said, got a phone call back here from Vanderbilt Hospital, and they want to talk to you. Bobby's in serious condition. He looked at me and took his finger and pointed to the back of the stage, which I got the message. You don't need to be out here. You need to be back there. So I walked behind the curtains. He comes off and he takes his phone call, or calls Vanderbilt back, and finds out the details. And then he turns to me and he says, "Don't ever do that. Don't ever walk out on stage. I don't care what's going on, and give me any kind of information like that. Never."
Because it would affect the show?
Well, the show must go on.
Right.
And I said, well, I thought you should know.
I would agree with you. I mean, it concerned his wife, and she's hanging
Sure.
by a thread. Like, that's...
Right. But I found out that was a no-no.
Okay.
So that was my first gut feeling from that point forward is, do you really care if you're in this business? Or have you lost all concept of humanity and relationships? Does your wife mean nothing to you? All these things are running through my mind because Bobby was a friend and Red was a friend. So had it been me on that stage and you behind the curtains, I'd want to know.
Well, what if she had passed away?
Right. And that's what I thought.
And missed the call by 30 minutes?
Sure. So
You'd have that hanging over your head forever.
the rest of your life, right? But so I felt that message was urgent.
Sure.
And I thought it needed to be delivered right then. I thought I was doing the right thing, which come to find out I didn't.
So he took you down a bit.
So he made it clear for me not to disturb anything that was happening in front of that stage. If the whole building was on fire, don't bother me while I'm out here. Okay, fine. So that was the bitter end of that deal. And that got me to thinking, okay, if you're going to lose all parts of your soul when it comes to humanity, then that's not me. And if this is what it's got to take to be a human or an artist, then I'm not quite sure I can follow through with this.
Did it make you question
It made me question him.
his friendship with
Yes.
you?
Yeah. Yes. Because if you don't care that much about your wife,
Yeah, how much does he give a shit about you?
right. So that ran through my mind. But once I got more involved in the industry, I could understand the point he's coming from. And it wasn't about him not caring. It was about he was miles away and there's nothing he could do about it at that particular time physically. So the information I gave him was from the doctor, right? The doctor didn't give me that much information except they said she's in desperate health at this particular point. And
Did she pull through?
oh yeah, she made it. But then on down the road, and that hit me bitter that night, is where I really stood, or anybody really stood. And that was only common sense for you to think that way. But I was only the driver at that particular moment. So my discomfort was a good lesson on one side of the fence. On the other side of the fence, I didn't trust anybody at that point.
And this is when you're still trying to figure out if you want to do
Yes,
it, right?
yes. I'm still hadn't had my conversation
Oh my gosh.
with this
Talk
person.
about a hard decision.
So
Oh my gosh.
anyway, I get scolded, and I take it pretty good. I don't know how else to take it. I'm miles away from home, you know. He's on the way I've got it. So hey, I'll hang out and find out what else goes on. So we'd played Vegas. I talked to James, my apprentice, on the phone from Vegas, and he assured me that everything was fine. My clients were happy, so I didn't have any worries. Just stay out there, and whenever you get back in, I'll be here. So I just kind of told him, I said, well, if you have any trouble, I'm a phone call away. So if you need anything, I always kept a book on the horses I worked on and what angles their feet was and what day I needed to shoe them and what the client's number was and so on and so forth. So he had all that information that he needed. So he could set up a hoof just as well as I could. And if there's anything any different, then all he had to do is call me. But we made it, and then we went into Kerrville, Texas from Vegas. And that was the big event, Charlie Pride's golf tournament, when we got there. That was that year, yeah. So we got there, and I'd never seen that many celebrities in one spot. I was walking around like a kid in a candy store, you know. Oh, really? That's so-and-so, and that's so-and-so, and that's Mo Bandy, and that's Joe Stampley. Really? Really? They're all here? So, you know, I was goggle-eyed and wide-eyed, and nothing to say. I'm sure that people look at me and say, what's that weirdo doing?
Well, you've met some of these people from your business, though, too,
well,
right?
I met not these artists.
Oh, these are
Never.
different. All
These are different artists.
Okay.
These are the ones I'm hearing on the radio, you know.
Different parts of the country.
Why,
So,
yeah,
gotcha.
well, I'm shoeing these horses, and I got my radio going. Mo Bandy's playing Bandy the Rodeo Clown, you know. Joe Stampley's doing his thing. And, you know, these people, Mel Tillis, you know, I hadn't seen Mel live since Nashville, you know. I've been up there with him, but seeing him out on the concert, never had seen him in the concert. So all these people were going to perform tonight, you know, like Waylon Jennings was there, you know. Here's Mel Tillis was there, Merle Haggard was there. All these people that you never had met. And
did you get to meet them?
yeah, sure. We was there for 2 days. So, you know, I was, no sleep for me, buddy. I'm going to hang out as long as these folks do, you know. And Charlie, I never had met Charlie Pride before. Heard him, but, you know, I knew he's black, but I'd never seen him. So, yeah, I mean, everything was interesting, way beyond interesting. And, you know, there was so many things going on, you know. Go over there at that barbecue pit, and that might be Waylon and Willie or whoever. And then you go to the next little place over there, little tent. It'd probably be Ernest Tubb or, you know. You didn't know, so you just hung out.
You now had unfettered access to these people.
Yeah,
in their performer.
Yeah, I was right amongst them, you know, sitting at the table eating with them. So, or, you know, sitting at the bar talking, listening to them talk, and that's mostly what I did. I want to hear these guys, you know. I want to tell some of the stories. Of course, they were accustomed to each other. And to me, it was like, this is a whole brand new sack of marbles. Wow, you know, I can't believe I'm even here with that much presence in your existence. I can't explain what the concept was.
Did you recognize any of them as clients?
No, none of the people that
in Kerrville, none of them you hadn't
there,
worked for them. Okay,
you know. And there were new folks that I never had met that was in the entertainment field that I didn't know anything about, you know, like Johnny Gimbel. There was Leon Roush and people I never heard of that basically from Texas, you know. But everybody there knew who they were, right? So I'm thinking, I don't know these people, but man, I'm here to hang out, so I'm hanging out. That's when Ernest Tubbs' driver came over, and he said, I understand you're a new driver on the circuit. And I said, well, yeah, you might say that, fairly new. And his name was Hoot, and I want to say his last name was Gibson, but I'm not quite sure. But he had been with Ernest for years. So he asked me some questions about the coach that I was driving for Red. Well, that's kind of like asking Ned in his first reader, right? Can you read that line? No, don't know anything about that. So he said, where'd you come from? I said, Minot, North Dakota. Well, actually, I came from Atlanta to Minot to Vegas and now here. And his next question was, have you drained the air tanks on that coach? What air tanks? He said, let me get this right. You came out of Atlanta, you drove into Minot, you came out of Minot into Vegas, and now you're down here in Kerbal, and you haven't drained the air tanks on that coach. I said, didn't know it had air tanks. He said, you are new, boy. Let me show you something. So he goes back to our coach, Red's coach, and he opens up these air tanks right in under the back wheels. You never seen like a slime that came out of those tanks. It's piles of it, right? He said, you're fortunate that you're even here. That slime gets on those brake shoes. There's no way you could stop that coach if you had to. You're lucky. So we're going to spend the next 2 days, and I'm going to give you lessons on what you need to do to maintain this coach. So he did. For the next 2 days, I spent with Hoot. And then at night, we would go to the performances when they was performing. But Hoot was right there by my side, and he was kind of like Canfield. He taught me everything about that coach. When he opened up the bays on Ernest Tubbs' bus, he could have built an engine sitting right there in that parking lot. He had everything possible that you can imagine in that coach. Now, I don't know whether that's what he expected me to do or not, but if he did, he was way out of his league because I knew nothing about a ranch, right? I knew that I was scolded pretty good by a main driver that had taught me a lot in the last 2 days that I was there. So that was quite an experience for me and a great lesson, thanks to Hoot. But yeah, that was probably the highlight of the whole trip. Not Minot, not Vegas, even though I'd never been to Vegas before. Vegas didn't intrigue me that much because everybody was doing their own thing in Vegas, right? And I didn't gamble. I didn't drink. So, you know, I had very little money. So, and didn't know how to spend it. If I had $1 million, I wouldn't have known how to gamble because I'd never been there before. And that's one of the things Red said as we went in there. See all those lights down there? Yep, I do. Well, they're all kept on by people like me and you. So watch your money. Don't go in thinking you're going to get wealthy, because your money is going to pay for those lights that's lighting up this place. So be careful with your coins. So I didn't gamble at all on that first trip. But later on, that turned to be different. But
So after Kerrville, did you then head back to?
we went back to Nashville, yeah, from Kerrville.
And then you had some decisions to make?
I had some decisions to make at that point, yeah. James he was kind of wore out from taking care of all that, having that anxiety on him all that period of time, because he wasn't qualified as I was. He was just an apprentice. And he told me then, he said, I don't think I can handle this and feel comfortable about it, but I'll stay as long as you want me to, but this is not my bag. I want to become, and he was a young man, and he said, I want to actually be an electrician. So, you probably need to help me wind this up while you're here. And Red had asked me too. He said, okay, you need to make some decisions. So when you're at home this time, and because we're going back out pretty quick, and when you're home this time, figure out what you want to do, and let your people know what you're going to do. Of course, he felt comfortable by saying that because he had his own farrier on that coach, so I could shoot his horses anytime I needed to. But the other people that I'd worked hard to get up to, I just told them, I said, well, I like what I'm doing, so I'll probably get it resolved while I'm home. And I did. So I called on my clients and said, this opportunity's come up and I've chosen to take it, so you might want to find you somebody else, and I'll give you a few recommendations. And they were all nice. So
What'd you do with your blacksmith shop?
I packed it up and put it in a storage unit. Just tore it all down and stored it. And James wanted part of it, like he wanted the forge. So, okay. And he wanted the bellows. Okay. And so whatever he took, I had a 400-pound anvil that he wanted. And it was what they call a railroad anvil. And he said, I'd like to have that because just nothing but a keepsake. I'm not going to use it, but, I know where it came from and I know whose it was. So if you'll let me have that, I'll take it with you. Take it with me. And so I said, okay. So whatever you want in here, just get it. And the rest of it I'm going to put in storage. And that's what I did. Then that started my music career, or such, or my driver's career.
Well, you were exclusively a driver for a while, and then what happened where your responsibilities increased?
The next trip out, we had gone, I think, to Oklahoma or somewhere. And no, I'm sorry. We'd gone to Oklahoma, and we'd played a deal up there with the Texas Playboys. And came back in from that, came back in onto the coach. And Red said, I think I got some other responsibilities I want you to take care of. And he said, I'm just going to consider you the road manager. I said, all right. I'm already managing the road. I'm driving this bus down it, right? He said, no.
And I bleed the tanks.
Right, yes. I also bleed the tanks. And I check the oil, and to make sure that your air conditioners are working in your room.
Right.
So all those kind of things, I think I'm pretty much managing the road. He said, road manager's job is a little different. So I'm going to sit down and explain this to you. And I want you to go taking care of this. Because I've got other things I need to be doing. And I don't need to be doing this. And the boys in the band, that's what they are. They're the band. They don't need to know what goes on behind the scenes. Only thing they need to know is what time to be on stage. And that's going to be your job. You're going to have to tell them not what to play, not how to play it. You're going to tell them when to play. If we're got a booking deal and it's 9 o'clock at night that they need to be on stage, 9:15 they do not need to be where they have been, hanging out at the bar or talking to some pretty girl over in the corner. They need to be on that stage exactly when that contract says so. 9 o'clock, the band kicks off. You make sure they're on there. That's one of your jobs.
Who was doing that stuff previously?
Nobody. It was kind of, Danny would, if he wasn't talking to somebody, then it was his responsibility, or it was Woody's responsibility. So nobody actually had that.
I see.
It was just, graciously.
Things were getting too
It was getting too
hectic.
complicated at that particular point. So it wasn't no more of a harem scarum deal. You know, like, we're here to play, and all right, so it's 9:15. All right, I'll go on in a few minutes. No, that had to stop. It had to become more professional, you know. And I told him, I said, well, I'm going to be stepping on toes, because if you put me in that position, then I'm going to regiment it. It's going to be exactly like you want me to be. And whatever you have to say is exactly what it's going to be. And he said, well, there's a lot of things that you take out of the concept that me and you're going to have to talk about. Because if I give you, you're going to have to learn how to diplomatically work these guys. It's not going to be like you're a drill sergeant. And you're going to have to be diplomatic about how you collect the money. I said, I'm going to do that? Yes, you're going to do that. You're going to take care of everything on the road that a road manager is supposed to take care of. And I said, drive the bus too? Yep, that's what you're going to do. So...
almost makes you wonder how the hell they were getting by before.
Well, you know, it's...
collecting the money was just
when
assigned to nobody?
A road manager, most people don't know what a road manager does. And I didn't. Trust me. I had no idea. I thought, well, you know, like I told Red, I'm already managing the road, you know. I'm driving this coach down it and I hadn't killed nobody yet, so I think I'm doing a pretty good job, right? Well, the road manager's responsibilities, when it's handed to you on a platter like that, it's like, when he goes through everything that you're going to do, you're going to call the radio stations, you're going to set up my appointments, you're going to make sure that this magazine that's going to interview me today has the right questions, and you're going to read them over. You're going to put me in a prime position, and you're going to inform me before you bring them on, and I'm going to inform you on what I want them to ask me. And you're going to take care of everything outside of the singing part.
This sounds like what Colonel Parker did for Elvis.
Well, basically it is.
I mean, it's not just a road manager; it's a full-blown manager.
Yeah, you got every responsibility that you can imagine. Yeah. If
Although
the boys,
Colonel Parker didn't go on the road, and you're actually going on the road too.
Yes, I'm on the road
because he
too.
sat in his office and did all that stuff. But you actually
but he
have
had
to go.
other people under him so he dictated to them what he wanted to do.
Right, you're doing everything.
And I'm doing everything. So I said, well, I hope there's that much time for me to do that. So,
it sounds
which
like
I
a
found
non-stop job.
Right, it is full, and there's no sleep for you, because any kind of petty activity that happens with anybody in the band, that no longer. They used to go to the artist, right? That stopped. You do not go to that artist. You do not bother him for anything. Whatever your problem is, you have to go through me to get to him. So, I'm the block.
So the whole dynamics of the group changed.
Everything changed. Which, guess what? I was the bad guy for a long time.
Sure, yeah.
You know?
Well, just from what you described.
Yes. So when
you should have hired a bus driver.
Right.
You had enough to do.
So, and this is probably what happened when I was in Kerbal. That's probably what set the whole thing up, because we was playing Kerbal. Danny was supposed to, and Danny is Redley's brother. So, and this is where I met one of my greatest friends my entire life. So Red come around behind stage, and I was sitting there goggle-eyed looking at all the other entertainers and listening to them talk and trying to find out as much information as I could, you know. So Red comes around behind the stage and he says, Don, where's Danny? Well, it ain't my day to watch him. You know, I don't know where he's at. So Darrell Hicks, the bass player for Red, was standing there, and he said, I saw him go up there to Duncan's room a while ago. He went up to Duncan's room. And Red looked at me and he said, go up there and get him and tell him needs to get his ass on stage right now. So I go up, and when the guy said Duncan, I, I didn't
Dunkin'
mean
Donuts?
That, yep,
Huh? Dunkin'
yeah,
who?
didn't mean nothing to me. So I go up, I rap on the door, and this big, tall gentleman walks to the door, and he said, yes. And I just pushed him out of the way and went right by him. Danny was sitting on his bed, sitting over there playing the guitar. And I said, you need to get your butt up and get it down on stage right now. And this big, tall gentleman standing in that doorway, he just looking with his hands in his pocket, standing there like, I don't know what's going on here. So anyway, I walk right by him, go back out. Danny follows me with his guitar, and he's down on stage. Him and Red have a few words. Danny goes on, band's kicked off, and I think that's what set it up, is for the interview with Red coming to me and saying, now you're going to be taking care of this. Because of that event, because this was regimented at Charlie's golf tournament. There wasn't no harem scarum. There wasn't no 15 minutes before bands. Everybody was snapped right on the deal, except Red's group. And I think that triggered what was fixing to happen with Red's group.
Because they looked unpolished.
Yes.
Compared to the rest.
Right. So he put a lot of those things on me that he either didn't want to take care of or didn't have the time to take care of. And he felt like that I was the guy that was going to handle it. So, and that's going to be part of your job. Well, now I know there is 2 bus drivers on today's coaches, right? Also a road manager, all on his own, right? And then they got roadies that handles all the equipment and all that kind of stuff. That didn't exist on my end of the spectrum. I was everything, I was the valet, if that's what you wanted to call, go to the cleaners and get my clothes done, I'm not polishing your boots.
Did you break down the equipment and set it up too?
No, I did not do that. I refused to do that. I wasn't your PD boy. So,
So you didn't have to worry about setting up the sound or the stage or any of that
I had to work with the sound guys.
You did?
I did. And the lighting.
And the lighting.
And the lighting. I had to make sure everything was there. I had to know what that artist was going to wear and what those lights needed to look like shining on that artist at that particular moment.
So
I had to learn lighting.
Stuff?
Huh?
Was this all intuitive stuff, or did people give you advice along the way, or was it just trial and error?
I'd have to say, what are you wearing tonight? And when the artist would tell me I'm going to wear a white shirt, black pants, then I'd have to go to the lighting director and I'd say, okay, you working the spotlight? Yes, sir, I am. Okay. He's wearing white, so what do we need to go with that? What's going to make him stand out? Well, I don't have that kind of light, so he needs to change clothes. I'd have to go to the artist and tell the artist, okay, he don't have the kind of light that's going to make you look good under that lighting if you're going to wear that.
That's interesting, because you'd think something like that would just be an afterthought, unless it was like, Elvis wearing his specially designed cape or something. This is just somebody who's like, well, I threw on this shirt with these pants.
Right.
And then you have to go say, all right, well, does this work?
You're going to have to change it. Right.
So then did you actually design wardrobes for these people too?
No, I did not design their clothes. But with what I was finding out, they were learning too. That, okay, find out next time you talk to this company that has booked us, find out who the lighting people are and call and see if they have this particular kind of light that's going to make me look good in these clothes.
So you all learned kind of together.
And that particular point we was all learning.
Yeah.
And I learned about the sound because a lot of places, Red played, the boys in the band set up the sound. Then we got into bigger events like rodeos and that kind of stuff. Their equipment wasn't nearly powerful enough, so they'd hire sound people to come in. So I learned right off that don't piss off the sound guy, You go to him and you say, look, you give him a playlist of what you're going to do. And if you can keep his attention, maybe with a $100 bill or a $200 bill, it doesn't matter. He's going to make you or break you. It don't matter what it costs you. Don't piss off the sound guy, because he'll ruin you. So I'd give him a little information about the group and what they're going to do, and where Red needed to be, or where Johnny needed to be, or whatever, whoever I was working with at that particular moment. And he'd say, well, okay, we're going to do a sound check. So you need to have them here at a certain time. I'm going to be here. We're going to be all set up at this particular time. They need to be here at 2:15 this afternoon. We're going to run a sound check, and I'm also going to run a pink test, which is finding out the dead corners of the building, whichever one you're working in. And I need them on there doing their thing while I'm doing that. So 2:15, I expect you to be here. We'll get your sound set up for tonight. All right? They wouldn't like to hear it, but boys, load up on the bus. It's 2:15. We got to get down there at 2:30 for the sound guy. Well, man, they're paying me to play, and I play tonight. You're going to do some damn sound check, or we're going to find somebody else. So get your butt on the bus. I'm taking you down there. All you got to do is do your sound check. Then I'll bring you back, and you can play whatever you want to do up until 9:30 tonight. But at 9:30 tonight, you're going to have your butt back down there. But right now, we got sound check.
So they sound like a bunch of petulant children.
Yeah, it was. It babysitting.
And you're in your 20s.
I'm 26, or 27, almost 27 now. So, you know, you got the drummer that had a quarrel with his wife.
Well, the good thing is you had your grandfather who rubbed off on you.
Yes, yeah. I had that backbone.
You may not have gone to the military, but you probably had that drill sergeant in your genetics.
Yeah. Somewhere it was involved in there, yeah. So, you know, Danny was mad because he didn't get to spend the night with some girl.
Sure.
Or, you know, the drummer was hostile because he'd forgot that he needed more sticks. He didn't know he was going to be out this long, so he'd broken all of his sticks. So what am I going to play with tonight? Well, I don't play your drums, you know. I don't know what you need. You need to take care of that when you're home instead of partying, right? So I'll see if I can't locate a place to where we can get you some sticks, you know. So that was my job. Again, I'd have to.
This is before Google, so you had to grab a phone book and look up a music store.
Yeah, I asked the sound guy, the lighting guy, man, is there a music store around here somewhere? This guy I've got on drums, he's broke off his sticks.
He doesn't have any sticks.
So
my drummer can't drum.
All right. So, you know, I need some help, so if you can help me. So, and they were nice. They would say, yeah, you know. Or they'd call a friend of theirs if the stores was closed, and, you know, that somebody they knew. Well, we need some sticks, you know, or we need some guitar strings, or we need a kick drum skin.
Well, yeah, you got to have backup strings because those can break on stage, and then you're in real trouble. Or you probably just have to have a backup guitar that's already tuned and ready to go.
Sure. So I learned a lot.
Yeah.
During that process, that things I needed to know. That here I thought it was all a gravy train before, you know. Now I'm finding out, you know, there's a lot of work involved in this. And no time for sleep. None on my behalf.
Did you have time to, I mean, did this take any of the sheen off of your dreams of how music?
No, because I was so involved every day at doing my job. I wasn't even realizing that. I mean, I knew that I wasn't sweating, right? I wasn't perspiring anywhere. I didn't have a smell of a horse all over me. So even though as much work as I was doing, I was thinking, man, this is life.
Yeah, so it was all good
yeah,
at the beginning?
It was all good. I mean, it was fascinating, you know? You look at all these people and you're thinking, to start with, you think, man, these are special people. They don't have any problems. Then when you put that management position on me, and I'm seeing how everything has to work, then there's a lot of responsibility. I've got to get them there. I've got to make sure that everything is right when the artist walks out there. I've got to make sure that the artist is in good shape. Nobody's pacifying him, or he's interrupted on something. He's got time to concentrate and meditate on what he's going to do for performance that night with no interruptions from any of the outside people. So yeah, I was fighting a battle between the band and him. I was fighting a battle between him and the lighting. I was fighting a battle between the lighting and the sound guy. So everywhere you turned, you had a responsibility. And then after all that, when the evening's done, you better have the check from where you was playing. So negotiating that and talking to the radio stations and making sure that the interviews with newspapers or whatever was going to take place.
Did you set those up? It was your job to set
Normally
them up?
They would call and ask if they could speak to the writer or speak to the artist, and they wanted to do a some kind of an interview, and it was either the radio station or the magazine or whatever.
How would they get a hold of you though? Because you're all on a bus.
Well, no, they would call the hotel wherever we're staying.
Oh, I see.
So they'd call and set up the interview. Well, we understand Red Steagall's in town, so we're calling, and this is the number. What are you to Red? Well, I'm the road manager. Okay. Can we set up an interview? Can he be here in the morning at 9 o'clock for an interview, live interview on the radio station? That wasn't for me to say. I'd say, let me have your information, and I'll get with the artist, and I'll call you back. Because he might have had something else already booked. For all I knew, I had, So.
Did he have a promoter at least?
Oh, yeah, he had several promoters.
Back in Nashville doing stuff?
Well, yeah, booking agents, promotion, and that kind of stuff usually came from the label. So
at least you didn't have to deal with that part of it.
No, I didn't have to deal with that part, but I'd have to deal with the booking agents and that kind of stuff, because those booking agents, we had 2 or 3 booking agents. So those booking agents, none of them corresponded with each other.
Of course.
Where Red was going to be.
They're just
so they've just
double booking, triple booking.
Yeah, they're just throwing darts at the map, hoping that, So where are y'all now? We're in California. Well, you need to be in New York tomorrow night.
Pine Bluff.
Yeah. So I'm sorry, we can't make New York tomorrow night. I'm driving, This is not a whiz. I cannot get there like a jet, right? And we've got all this equipment. So we'd have to find out what's the next closest spot that we can play and make money doing it, rather than being it like a bimbo or a puppet trying to do something you knew you couldn't get there in time, But if you say, okay, we're going to play that, and it might be, you'd have to make the choice between career-wise and money-wise. So tell me an event that he's playing, is it going to help his career? Or is it just for the money? Careers always come first, regardless of money. If it's a free gratis, and if it's something that a TV program is going to take place and you're going to be on it, and they're not going to pay you a dime, you want that artist on that TV show, rather than being some honky-tonk down the street. Because there's a lot of career movements made from television and radio that's behind the scenes, that you don't know why you're doing it. You just know it's the best thing you can do. So you're always thinking of way up ahead of everybody. That booking agents and promoters and that kind of stuff, because promoters, they're basically, they're in it for the money.
Sure.
So if they've got an act that's playing a Barnum and Bailey circus, and you've got 20,000 people there at that Barnum and Bailey Circus, and they want me to play IRA rodeo down the street for $30 or $3,000 or whatever. I want to be at Barnum and Bailey where there's 12,000 people there. You know, I don't want to be down there with 600 people. Even though that pays, Barnum and Bailey's free gratis. So there's going to be cameras at Barnum and Bailey, and they're going to show it on 6 o'clock news. So that's where we're going to be. Those kind of decisions, you know. And a lot of times it's spur of the moment. You had to make it quick.
Well, so for our next chat, I guess we can sort of give a segue into. So now we've kind of addressed how you got into the road manager position, and how you transitioned from being a farrier into being a road manager of a up and coming country act. I guess maybe the next topic to discuss is did he ever go full bore successful, or
Sure.
And then that sort of change.
Well, you're only up there so long, and he was big in the rodeo world. So rodeo and rodeo circuits is what he concentrated on. And he done an album in '76. It's called "To All My Cowboy Friends," and it's probably, without a doubt, one of the most outstanding rodeo albums ever recorded.
So is that a genre of country music, rodeo music?
Well, rodeo music is a rancher's way of life.
So the songs are all dedicated towards
The rodeo world and cowboy and
roping and
riding and bull riding and broncs and ranch life.
I see. Well, I guess we'll have more to talk about next time, but it's interesting to kind of follow you along your path, and kind of feels like we're climbing up the mountain now.
Yeah.
So maybe the next one will be kind of tailoring off towards
Well, get ready for the
top. Yeah.
Get ready for the valley.
And I'm guessing there were lessons learned where it kind of, I guess you probably grew creatively because you started songwriting more, but then also you became somewhat disillusioned, or maybe not disillusioned, but I guess disaffected with the realities of, the dark side of Nashville and being at the top and all that. So that'll be a real meaty one for us to discuss. So
all right.
I'll look forward to that one next, but